All right. We're going to do a quick stream and run over The Mandalorian Season 2, some characters that may show up from canon. Not the main ones that everybody's been talking about, like Ahsoka and Boba Fett. We're going to dig a little deeper into all the canon material and kind of pull out some likely people that were around and that we've written about in other stories that could pop up that we can keep our eyes out for. All right, so let's jump right in. First up, we got Nora Wexley and Sloane. This is kind of a double, right? Nora Wexley was the leader of a group of rebels, New Republic, that really helped hunt the Empire down and kind of force them into the unknown regions from the Battle of Endor to the Battle of Jakku. They were a big part of it. They were kind of like their own special operating cell. So Nora led that. She's actually the mother of Snap Wexley, who's the X-Wing pilot played by Greg Grunberg in the sequel trilogy, who's Poe's good friend. So she's his mom. And so it'd be interesting to see because she kind of retires after the end of the Aftermath series, which was basically 4 to 5 years before The Mandalorian, okay? Roughly in the timeline. So she may end up, she could show up. All right, Ray Sloane, less likely, I would think. She was with the remnant of the Empire that goes to the unknown regions that will eventually become the First Order, but we did lose track of her in canon. We don't know a ton about her. So could she be working with Moff Gideon, the Empire, the Emperor? Who knows? Okay, but those are two to keep an eye out on. Another part of the crew, this may be the most likely to show up, so we should keep our eyes out for Jazzamari. All right, she was a bounty hunter. She was also part of the crew with Nora Wexley. Okay, that helped really hunt down a lot of the Empire stuff. The fragments of the Empire after the Battle of Endor. She was a bounty hunter. She's also the niece of Sugi, who was a Zabrak bounty hunter in the Clone Wars. So they actually talk in Aftermath a little bit with Dengar and Embo and Mercurial Swift. They talk about how bounty hunting's, where bounty hunting's going to go, and kind of almost foreshadowing what happens in The Mandalorian with the Bounty Hunters Guild. So Jazzamari Zabrak bounty hunter would be very interesting to show up. I think it could be likely that her name's dropped or you see her in the background. And the last one of the Aftermath crew that I think has a chance is Sinjir Rathvilus, this guy right here. Again, these were all written about, so we haven't seen them in action. So they could look slightly different, so we'll have to see. But Sinjir is an interesting case. He was actually a former ISB agent until the Battle of Endor, where he defected, kind of went out on his own for a while, and then ends up kind of becoming part of the New Republic with this crew with Nora and Jazz. So he would be interesting. He's at the end of Aftermath. He's in a situation where he's working with Mon Mothma, the Chancellor of the New Republic at that time. But this would be an interesting way. He would be a character that could pull the New Republic into the Mandalorian story. He kind of did some shadier stuff and was known to be able to do some shady stuff. So we'll see. He'd be an interesting one to pull up, especially if Jazz shows up, because he and Jazz were pretty tight. All right, this one's a stretch, but it's a fun one. Admiral Aralani. She was obviously a Chiss. Was close with Thrawn. We get her a little bit in the Thrawn trilogy. You get a lot more of Aralani in the new Thrawn book coming out that actually just came out, Chaos Rising. But the Chiss would be interesting, especially if this whole thing with the Thrawn Ezra stuff is going to get pulled in eventually. Aralani had Eli Vanto, who was a former Imperial agent, with her. And the Chiss could get involved, especially if Mando's going out into the unknown regions to find Baby Yoda's home, assuming that the unknown regions is where they go. Another good one that I think will be overlooked, and I think could sneak in the background, is Oji of Bastoon. If you remember from Rise of Skywalker, he's basically the assassin that was sent out to find Rey, ends up murdering Rey's parents. He had the dagger thing. He died on Pasana when he fell into kind of the shifting sands or whatever. So he'd be interesting because he was a side character. Really cool look, right? And a little bit in the background that we know from like the visual dictionaries and stuff is that he was kind of working with Yup Tashu and the Empire. He was like a Sith relics hunter, so involved with the Acolytes of the Beyond. So him along with the Acolytes of the Beyond would be interesting if they get mentioned or brought into the story in any way. Also, kind of a neat looking alien, so that'd be neat. This one's also a stretch, but fun to think about. We do not know where Quinlan Vos is at this point. We've heard rumblings that he may be in the Bad Batch series. Wild rumor, but still. So this would be interesting because he's kind of unknown at this point where he is. He was a Jedi, read Dark Disciple with Asajj Ventress. So there's that whole side of it where he kind of went dark and came back, and he's missing after Order 66. So he'd be an interesting tie-in. This is more of just a fun one. All right, what else do we have? We have Snoke, okay? Obviously, everybody knows Snoke. We saw him in the Kylo Ren comics when Kylo kind of first goes over. So be interesting to see him in a slightly, he looks a little bit fresher off the cloning rack in the Kylo series. We don't know exactly when he shows up, but this would also be interesting. Maybe a Moff Gideon, Rey Sloane tie-in with Snoke. Unlikely, but we'll throw it out there. Now these last two, or these next two, sorry, I have three more. These next two are kind of the groups. So it would be interesting to see Alphabet Squadron, any members of them. Okay, we still haven't completed Alphabet Squadron's story. We do know that there's another book coming out next year. But it's safe to say they were hunting down Imperial factions in that time between Endor and the Battle of Jakku. Okay, specifically Shadow Wing. They're all interesting characters. Will Lark, Kairos, Nath Tenzin, and Chaz Nachadek, and their leader, who I won't get into because there's depending on what you've read the books, but they all could show up in different forms because we don't know yet what happens to them. So if any of them survived, it wouldn't really be too much of a spoiler. So that would be interesting to see. Along the same lines, and actually interestingly enough, Twilight Squadron Company, which was a book that came out very early in the canon reboot, kind of follows like frontline warriors throughout the original trilogy. Okay, some of them survive. Actually, some of them are mentioned in the Alphabet Squadron book on the Lodestar with Hera. She was like, they were under her at that point. So, it'd be interesting to see them, especially, I think this connection would be more along the lines of Cara Dune. She was a Republic shock trooper. This is kind of what these guys did too. So maybe a name drop, or Cara brings one of these guys in if they're still around. Obviously, she was off the grid because it was kind of like the New Republic was moving in a peaceful way. These guys would be in the same situation. The big guy, the Basilisk, would be fun to see because I'd love to see that in live action. His name's Gadrin, and the other one's Namir. There was another Imperial governor, a governor that was kind of turned, a very Chalice. She'd be interesting because there's that whole Imperial kind of side of it. And Brand was another one, so we'll keep our eyes out for them. Again, haven't seen them in live action yet. So it would be tougher to see. We'd need to hear a name drop. All right, and finally, a fun one. This one is based off of Cobb Vanth and Tatooine and Boba Fett, that whole storyline showing up. And maybe there being something with going back to Tatooine. But Cobb Vanth hired our guy, Maliki, who was Jabba the Hutt's Beastmaster. He was in charge of the Rancor in the pit that Luke fought and killed. He's actually in charge of a little baby Huttlet that Vanth is watching over on Tatooine. It's said it's somewhere in this 5-year range after the Battle of Endor, so this could be, we could see this. This would be really interesting. This is just a fun callback to Return of the Jedi. But yeah, so we'll keep our eye out for all these. We'll be looking. I'll definitely bring it up in some videos if we catch them and see them. But yeah, I just wanted to go over some more fun, deeper canon looks of people you can look out for, names you can look out for in the second season of The Mandalorian. That's a little deeper cut than Ahsoka and Boba Fett. So can't wait for the trailer to drop soon, hopefully. And then can't wait for the season. So we'll catch you later. All right, Padawans? See ya.